The Corvani battle fleet hung in the darkness of space like a swarm of angry metal insects. Admiral Vorthax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the blue planet spinning slowly before him. Earth. The humans called it Earth. Soon it would have a new name, a Corvani name, and its people would serve the Empire as all conquered species did. "Status report," Vorthax demanded, his four arms crossed behind his back. His scales gleamed under the bridge lights, a deep purple that marked him as nobility among his kind. "All weapons charged, Admiral," his weapons officer replied. "The human defense fleet has been destroyed. Their orbital stations are gone. Nothing stands between us and the planet." Vorthax allowed himself a small smile. The humans had fought harder than expected. They had destroyed over 300 Corvani ships before their fleet fell. Such losses would have broken most species. But the Corvani had thousands of ships, and the humans had only hundreds. Numbers always won in the end. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Target their military installations first, then their major cities. We will show them the cost of resistance." The weapons officer hesitated. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. The humans wish to speak with you." "Surrender?" Vorthax asked with amusement. "How quickly they break." "They do not say, Admiral, but the transmission comes from their remaining leadership, a woman who calls herself Secretary General of the United Nations." Vorthax waved one of his upper hands. "Put her on screen. Let us hear their begging." The main view screen flickered and a human female appeared. She was older, with gray hair and deep lines on her face. But her eyes were sharp, and she did not look like someone who was about to surrender. "Admiral Vorthax," she said. Her voice was steady. "I am Secretary General Elena Vasquez of the United Nations of Earth. I am speaking to you on behalf of all humanity." "Speak quickly, human," Vorthax replied. "My weapons are already aimed at your cities." "I know," she said, "and I know that you expect us to surrender. Your empire has conquered 17 species before us. None have survived as free peoples. You destroy resistance, enslave the survivors, and take what you want." Vorthax nodded. "You understand the situation. Good. Then you also understand that surrender is your only choice." "No," the Secretary General said. "Surrender is not an option we are considering." Vorthax laughed. It was a harsh sound like metal grinding against stone. "You have no fleet. Your orbital defenses are destroyed. What options do you believe you have?" "We have options you have not considered," she replied. "Admiral, your species has never encountered a race quite like humanity. You see a primitive species with basic technology. You see easy prey, but you do not understand what we are." "I understand that you will die if you do not surrender," Vorthax said. His patience was running thin. "Perhaps," she said, "but so will you. Admiral, during the battle in orbit, did you notice anything strange about our tactics?" Vorthax frowned. He did not like where this conversation was going. "Your captains were more aggressive than expected. Some of them rammed their ships into ours even when they could have retreated. Foolish waste of life." "It was not foolish," the Secretary General said. "It was a distraction. While you were focused on destroying our fleet, we were doing something else, something you did not notice." "What are you talking about?" Vorthax demanded. The Secretary General smiled. It was not a happy smile. "We launched 12,000 missiles during the battle. Your sensors detected them all. Your point defense systems destroyed most of them, but not all of them were aimed at your fleet." Vorthax felt something cold move through his body. "Explain." 347 missiles escaped the battle zone," she said. "They accelerated to near-light speed and are now on their way to your home system. Each missile carries a nuclear payload. They will arrive at Corvan Prime in approximately 18 months." The bridge of the Eternal Conquest fell silent. Vorthax stared at the screen, unable to speak. "At near-light speed," the Secretary General continued. Those missiles will be almost impossible to detect and intercept. Even if you destroy half of them, the rest will reach your planet. And nuclear weapons moving at 98% of light speed do not just explode. They impact with the force of asteroids. Your world will burn, Admiral. You're bluffing, Vorthax said, but his voice was weak. I am not, she said. We built these weapons in secret over the past 5 years, ever since we first detected your empire approaching our space. We knew we could not defeat you in a straight fight. We knew you would come for us eventually, so we prepared a different kind of war. This is madness, Vorthax said. You would destroy our entire civilization. If you destroy ours, yes, the Secretary General replied. This is what we call mutual destruction. You can kill all of us, Admiral, every man, woman, and child on Earth, but you cannot stop those missiles, and when they reach Corvin Prime, your species will die with us. Vorthax looked at his officers. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. But for the first time in his long military career, he did not know what orders to give. Why are you telling me this? He asked finally. If what you say is true, then there is nothing I can do. The missiles are already launched. Because we did not launch missiles only at your homeworld, the Secretary General said. We launched them at all 17 systems in your empire, your colonies, your allies, your slave worlds. Every world that serves the Corvani Empire has weapons heading toward it right now. The cold feeling in Vorthax's body spread to every limb. That's impossible. You don't have the resources. We built nothing but missiles for 5 years, she said. Every factory, every mine, every worker on Earth contributed to this project. We called it Project Ragnarok. If we must die, we decided, then we will take our enemies with us. Vorthax's weapons officer spoke up, his voice shaking. Admiral, if this is true, we need to send word home immediately. They need to prepare defenses. There is no defense, the Secretary General said. Not against weapons moving at near light speed. Your sensors will detect them perhaps minutes before impact. You cannot stop them. Then why tell us at all? Vorthax demanded. If we cannot stop them, why reveal your plan? The Secretary General leaned forward, and for the first time, Vorthax saw something other than cold calculation in her eyes. He saw hope. Because we do not want to destroy you, she said. We launched those missiles because we had no choice, but there is still time. 18 months is a long time, and there is one thing that can stop those missiles. What? Vorthax asked. A signal, she said. Each missile contains a receiver. If it receives a specific coded transmission, it will disarm and destroy itself. We built that failsafe into every weapon because we hoped we would never have to use them. Then send the signal, Vorthax said quickly. Send it now. I cannot, she replied. The signal can only be sent from a transmitter on Earth's surface, and we will only send it if you agree to our terms. Vorthax felt his anger rising. You dare to make demands. You are in no position to negotiate. We are in every position to negotiate, the Secretary General said calmly. You can destroy Earth in the next hour if you want, but then those missiles will complete their journey and your empire will burn. Or you can listen to our terms and we can all survive this day. The Admiral stood in silence, his 4 hands clenched into fists. Every instinct told him to attack, to punish this arrogant species for daring to threaten the Corvani. But those missiles were real. He could see it in the human's eyes. She was not bluffing. What are your terms? He asked through gritted teeth. The Secretary General nodded slowly. We want peace, real peace. Not surrender, not slavery, not conquest. We want the Corvani to leave Earth and never return. We want recognition as an independent species with the right to exist. And we want something else, something that will cost you nothing but will mean everything to us. What? Vorthax asked. We want you to free the species you have conquered, she said. All 17 of them. Release them from slavery. Let them rebuild their own civilizations. Give them back their freedom. Vorthax stared at her in disbelief. You want us to destroy our own empire, to give up everything we have built over centuries. We want you to become something better than an empire, she replied. We want you to become part of a community of free species, working together instead of dominating each other. We believe this is possible. We believe that even the Corvani can change. And if we refuse, then we all die together, she said simply. Admiral, I have grandchildren on this planet. I do not want them to die, but I would rather see them die free than live as slaves. This is not a bluff. This is not a negotiation tactic. This is the truth of who we are. Humans would rather be destroyed than conquered. Vorthax looked at the planet below, the blue world with its white clouds and green lands. Such a small world, such a primitive species, and yet they had done what no other race had ever done. They had made the Corvani afraid. I need to consult with my government, he said finally. This decision is not mine to make alone. Of course, the Secretary General said, but do not take too long. Every hour that passes brings those missiles closer to their targets. And Admiral, I hope you choose peace, for all our sakes. The screen went dark and Vorthax stood alone with his thoughts. Behind him, his officers whispered among themselves, their voices filled with fear. The great Corvani fleet, conqueror of 17 species, hung motionless in space, paralyzed by a threat they had never imagined possible. For the first time in history, the hunters had become the hunted, and the prey had teeth that could bite back across the stars. The Council of Elders met in the great chamber on Corvin Prime, surrounded by the trophies of 1,000 conquests. The skulls of defeated enemy commanders lined the walls. Battle flags from destroyed civilizations hung from the ceiling. Every surface reminded visitors of the Corvani Empire's power and glory. But today, the elders did not feel powerful. They sat in stunned silence as Admiral Vorthax finished his report. The holographic display showed the trajectory of the human missiles, thousands of small dots spreading across the galaxy toward every Corvani world. This is madness, Elder Corvith said. She was the oldest member of the council, her scales faded to a pale gray. No species has ever done something like this. It goes against all logic, all reason. The humans are not logical, Vorthax replied. They are something far more dangerous. They are willing to die for their beliefs. All species fight for survival, Elder Morkin said. That is nothing new. No, Vorthax said. You do not understand. The humans are not fighting for survival. They know they cannot survive a war against us. They accepted that from the beginning. Instead, they created a weapon that guarantees mutual destruction. They are willing to erase their entire species from existence if it means taking us with them. The council fell silent again. This concept was alien to them. The Corvani valued survival above all else. They conquered other species to ensure their own continued existence. The idea of deliberately choosing extinction was beyond their understanding. What do they want? Elder Corvith asked finally. You said they offered terms. Peace, Vorthax said. They want us to leave their world and never return. They want to be recognized as a free species. That is acceptable, Elder Morkin said. We have avoided species before when the cost of conquest was too high. There is more, Vorthax said. He paused, knowing what the reaction would be. They want us to free all the species we have conquered. They want us to release our slaves, abandon our colonies, and give up everything our empire has built. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several elders rose to their feet, their scales turning dark red with rage. Others shouted that the humans were insane, that such demands were impossible, that the empire would never submit to such humiliation. Elder Corvith raised her hand for silence. Despite her age, her authority was absolute. Let us think about this carefully, she said. What happens if we refuse? The missiles continue on their course, Vorthax said. Our scientists have analyzed the data the humans provided. They believe the threat is real. Those weapons will reach our worlds in approximately 18 months. At near light speed, interception is almost impossible. Almost impossible is not impossible, Elder Morkin said. We can build defenses. We can prepare. Our scientists estimate we might stop 60% of the missiles, Vorthax said. Perhaps 70% if we are lucky, but the humans launched thousands of them. Even if only 30% reach their targets, our civilization will be devastated beyond recovery. Then we destroy Earth, another elder said. We kill them all and make an example of them. And then what? Elder Corvith asked quietly. The missiles are already launched. Destroying Earth will not stop them. It will only guarantee that we have no one to send the disarm signal. We would be choosing our own death. The chamber fell silent once more. The truth of the situation was becoming clear. The humans had created a trap with no way out. The Corvani were caught between their pride and their survival. There is another option, a young voice said. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Vorthax's son, Captain Kelver, who had been allowed to attend the meeting as an observer. He was young for such a gathering, barely 50 years old. Speak, Elder Corvith said. We could capture the humans' leaders, Kelver said. Land troops on Earth, take their Secretary-General prisoner and force her to send the disarm signal. They will have thought of that, Vorthax said to his son. Any species clever enough to build this weapon will have prepared for such an attempt. Your father is right, Elder Corvith said. The humans told us the signal can only be sent from Earth's surface. That means they have a specific location, a specific transmitter, and probably multiple layers of security. If we attack them, they will destroy the transmitter before we can capture it. Then what do we do? Kelver asked. Surely we cannot surrender to these primitives. Elder Corvith stood slowly, her old bones creaking. She walked to the center of the chamber and looked at the holographic display, at the hundreds of missile trajectories crossing the stars. I have lived for 300 years, she said. I have seen our empire grow from a handful of systems to the greatest power in the galaxy. I have watched us conquer species after species, taking their worlds, their resources, their people. We told ourselves that this was our right. We told ourselves that the strong should rule the weak. It is the natural order of things. She turned to face the other elders. But I have also seen the price of empire. I have seen the endless wars, the rebellions, the cost of maintaining control over peoples who hate us. Every generation, we must fight again to keep what we have taken. Our armies never rest. Our factories never stop producing weapons. Our people live their whole lives in service to an empire that demands constant sacrifice. What are you saying, Elder? Morkin asked, his voice suspicious. I am saying that perhaps the humans have given us a gift, Corvith replied. A chance to become something different, something better. The chamber exploded in protest again. Elders shouted that she had gone senile, that she was a traitor to her species, that such words were unworthy of her position. But Elder Corvith stood calmly in the center of the chaos, waiting for the noise to die down. Let me ask you a question, she said when silence returned. Why do we conquer? We tell ourselves it is for resources, for security, for glory, but we have more resources than we can ever use. Our worlds are wealthy beyond imagination. Our security is guaranteed by the largest fleet in the galaxy. And our glory, what glory is there in crushing species that cannot fight back? They are weak, Morkin said. They deserve to be conquered. Do they? Corvith asked. The humans are weak by our standards. Their technology is primitive. Their bodies are fragile, and yet they have brought us to our knees. They have done what 17 species before them could not. They have made us question our empire. She pointed at the holographic display. Look at those missiles. Each one represents a human who gave their life to build it. Their entire planet worked together for 5 years on this project. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for freedom. They did not ask to be part of our empire. They only asked to be left alone, and when we refused, they found a way to fight back that we never imagined. You admire them, Morkin said with disgust. I respect them, Corvith corrected. There is a difference, and I believe we should accept their terms. The chamber was utterly silent. Even Morkin could not find words to respond. Consider what they are asking, Corvith continued. They want us to free our slaves, but maintaining slavery costs us enormous resources. The rebellions, the guards, the surveillance systems. What if we could redirect those resources toward other goals? They want us to give up our colonies, another elder said. They want us to give up control over other peoples, Corvith corrected. That is not the same thing. We could still trade with those worlds, still have relationships with those species, just not as masters and slaves. They are asking us to change everything about our civilization, Vorthax said quietly. That is not something we can do quickly or easily. No, Corvith agreed. It is not. But the humans are not asking us to change overnight. They are asking us to commit to a process, to begin a journey towards something different, and in return, they will disarm their weapons and allow us to survive. How do we know they will keep their word? Morkin demanded. How do we know they won't simply launch more missiles once the current ones are disarmed? We don't, Corvith admitted, but they could ask the same question about us. Trust must begin somewhere, and I believe the humans are sincere. They do not want to destroy us. They simply want to be free. She looked around the chamber at the assembled elders. We have a choice to make. We can cling to our pride and watch our civilization burn, or we can accept the humans' offer and begin building something new. The decision rests with all of you. The elders looked at each other, at the missile trajectories on the display, at the trophy skulls on the walls. For hours they debated, argued, and shouted. But in the end, the mathematics were simple. Pride was not worth extinction. When the vote was taken, it was close, but the majority chose survival. The majority chose to accept the humans' terms. Admiral Vorthax was given the task of communicating the decision to Earth. As he prepared the transmission, his son Kelver stood beside him. Do you agree with this decision, Father? Kelver asked. Vorthax was silent for a long moment. I think the elder Corvith is right, he said finally. The humans have shown us something we never expected to see. They have shown us that there is more than one way to be strong. Perhaps it is time for us to learn that lesson. He opened the communication channel to Earth. Somewhere on the blue planet below, a human woman was waiting for his answer. The answer that would determine the fate of two civilizations. Secretary General Vasquez, Vorthax said, we accept your terms. The next 5 years were the hardest in human history. Secretary General Vasquez had won the negotiation, but now came the real work. The Corvani had agreed to peace, but turning words into reality would require effort from both sides. The first step was sending the disarm signal. Elena Vasquez stood in the control room beneath the Swiss Alps, surrounded by scientists and military officers. The transmitter was a massive device, filling an entire underground chamber. It had been built in secret over 5 years, powered by reactors hidden deep in the mountain. Are you certain about this, Madam Secretary? General Chen asked. He was the commander of Earth's surviving military forces. Once we send the signal, we lose our leverage. If the Corvani go back on their word, then we will find another way to fight, Elena replied. But I believe they are sincere. The vote in their council was close, but the faction that chose peace is now in control. We must give them a chance. She looked at the control panel, at the single red button that would send a signal across the stars. One button to disarm thousands of nuclear missiles. One button to end the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen. Send the signal, she ordered. A technician pressed the button. Across the cosmos, traveling at the speed of light, a coded transmission raced toward the weapons humanity had built. One by one, the missiles received the signal. One by one, they deactivated, their nuclear cores going cold and silent. In the control room, there was no celebration, only relief. The threat of mutual destruction was gone, but the real work was just beginning. The peace treaty was signed on a space station between Earth and Corvan Prime. Representatives from both species came together for the historic ceremony. Elena Vasquez signed for humanity. Elder Corvith signed for the Corvani. But the treaty was only the beginning. The Corvani had agreed to free 17 enslaved species, to give up their colonies, to transform their entire civilization. This was not something that could happen overnight. The transition will be difficult, Elder Corvith said to Alina during a private meeting after the ceremony. Many of our people do not accept this change. They see it as a humiliation, a defeat. There will be resistance. We expected that, Alina replied. Change is always difficult, but we will help you in any way we can. Help us? Corvith looked surprised. You would help the species that tried to conquer you. We would help the species that is trying to change, Alina corrected. The Corvani who wanted to enslave us are not the same as the Corvani who chose peace. We believe in second chances. Corvith was silent for a long moment. In her 300 years of life, she had never encountered a species like the humans. They had threatened to destroy the galaxy, and now they were offering friendship. It was difficult to understand. There is something I do not understand, she said finally. Your species built those missiles knowing you could not survive a war against us. You chose to guarantee mutual destruction rather than accept defeat. That is unusual. Alina nodded. It is part of who we are. We call it many things: defiance, stubbornness, the refusal to accept impossible odds. Throughout our history, humans have chosen to fight even when there was no hope of victory. Sometimes we won anyway, sometimes we did not, but we never stopped fighting. That seems irrational, Corvith said. Perhaps it is, Alina agreed. But it is also our greatest strength. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We find a way or we make one. Your empire was built on the assumption that conquered species would accept defeat. We refuse to make that assumption. And now, Corvith asked, now that you have won, what will you do with that strength? Alina smiled. We will use it to build something better, not an empire but a community. A place where all species can be free, where no one dominates another, where we work together instead of fighting. That is what we always wanted, not power over others but the freedom to choose our own path. The years that followed were difficult but hopeful. Human advisors traveled to Corvani worlds to help manage the transition. Corvani leaders visited Earth to learn how humans organized their societies. Slowly, carefully, two very different species began to understand each other. The freed species presented their own challenges. Some of them had been enslaved for centuries and had forgotten how to govern themselves. Others harbored deep hatred toward their former masters and wanted revenge. Managing these conflicting interests required patience, diplomacy, and sometimes forceful intervention. The humans played a unique role in this process. They were seen as neither conquerors nor victims, but as outsiders who had won a different kind of victory. Other species trusted them as mediators, as honest brokers who had no interest in dominating anyone. You are becoming the center of a new order, Admiral Vorthax said to Alina during one of their regular meetings. He had become the Corvani ambassador to Earth, a role that suited him better than commanding warships. The species you helped free look to you for guidance. The Corvani who support peace look to you for protection. You have power now, Secretary General. We did not seek power, Alina replied. We sought freedom. If others see us as leaders, it is only because we showed them that a different way is possible. And yet you must be careful, Vorthax warned. Power changes those who hold it. I have seen it happen to my own people. We began as simple colonizers, seeking new worlds to settle. Somewhere along the way, we became conquerors. We told ourselves it was necessary, that we were making the galaxy safer and more orderly. We did not realize how much we had changed until a small blue planet forced us to look at ourselves. Elena nodded thoughtfully. We will be careful. That is why we are building this community together, with all species having a voice. No one will dominate. No one will control. We will make decisions together or not at all. The Council of Free Worlds was established 3 years after the peace treaty. Representatives from all 18 species, including the Corvani and humans, met on a newly constructed station in neutral space. The structure was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, a place where former slaves sat as equals with their former masters. The first session was tense. Many of the freed species harbored deep resentment toward the Corvani. Some demanded reparations, apologies, punishment for those who had committed crimes during the occupation. The discussions went on for weeks. Elena was chosen to chair the council, a role she accepted reluctantly. "I am only one voice among many," she reminded the delegates. "This council belongs to all of us." But the other species trusted her. She had threatened to destroy the galaxy to save her people, then shown mercy when she won. She understood both strength and compassion. She was, they believed, the right person to lead them into this new era. The hardest moment came when a delegate from the Vorth, one of the most brutally oppressed species, stood to address the council. His name was Kelthan, and his entire family had been killed in Corvani labor camps. "I came here wanting revenge," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I wanted to see the Corvani suffer as my people suffered. I wanted them to pay for every life they took, every family they destroyed, every future they stole from us." The chamber was silent. Everyone knew that his words reflected what many others were feeling. "But I have listened to the humans," Kelthan continued. "I have heard their stories. They faced the same choice we did. They could have been conquered, enslaved, destroyed. Instead, they found a way to fight that did not just defeat their enemy but transformed them. They turned conquerors into partners." He turned to look at the Corvani delegation. "I do not forgive what you did to my people. I do not forget. But I choose not to let that hatred define my future. If the humans can threaten to destroy the galaxy and then offer mercy, perhaps I can find a way to do the same." It was not a perfect moment. Many still disagreed. Many still wanted punishment. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall of hatred that had separated these species for so long. Elena watched from her chair, tears in her eyes. This was what she had fought for. Not just survival, not just freedom, but the chance to build something better. The chance for species that had been enemies to become something else. After the session, she stood at a window looking out at the stars. Vorthax joined her, his 4 arms folded in a posture that humans had come to recognize as contemplation. "Do you think this will work?" he asked. "This community of free worlds?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. "There will be setbacks, there will be conflicts, some species will struggle more than others, but I believe it can work because I believe that most beings, regardless of species, want the same things: security, prosperity, a future for their children. If we can focus on those shared desires, we can overcome our differences." "Your species is young," Vorthax observed. "You have only been in space for a few centuries. Yet you have accomplished something that older species never achieved. You changed the course of galactic history." "We had no choice," Elena said simply. "We refused to accept the alternatives." 20 years after the peace treaty, the galaxy was a different place. The Council of Free Worlds had grown from 18 species to 34, as other civilizations heard about the new order and asked to join. Trade routes that had once carried slaves now carried goods and ideas. Military fleets that had enforced conquest now protected shared borders. Elena Vasquez had retired from politics years ago. Her hair was completely white now, her body frail with age. But her mind was still sharp, and she remained a respected voice in galactic affairs. When the council needed wisdom, they often turned to her. She lived in a small house on the coast of Portugal, where her family had come from generations ago. Every morning, she walked along the beach, watching the waves and thinking about how far they had come. On this particular morning, she was not alone. Vorthax walked beside her, his four legs leaving strange patterns in the sand. He had aged too, his purple scales fading to a softer shade. But he was still strong, still sharp, still her friend. "You have visitors today," he said. "A delegation from the outer systems. They want to discuss joining the council." "Let the council handle it," Elena replied. "They don't need an old woman's advice." "They specifically asked for you," Vorthax said. "Your reputation has spread far beyond your own species. When alien civilizations think of humanity, they think of you." Elena laughed, but there was no bitterness in it. "I am just one person. I did what I had to do to save my people. Any leader would have done the same." "No," Vorthax disagreed. "That is not true. Any leader might have threatened to destroy us, but not every leader would have offered mercy. Not every leader would have worked to build something new instead of taking revenge. That was uniquely human." They walked in silence for a while, listening to the waves crash against the shore. Earth was different now too. The scars of the orbital bombardment had healed. New cities had risen where old ones had been destroyed. The planet was green and blue again, recovering from the wounds of war. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had made different choices," Elena said softly. "If we had surrendered instead of fighting, if we had destroyed your civilization instead of offering peace, would the galaxy be better or worse?" "That is a question without an answer," Vorthax replied. "We can only deal with the reality we have created, and in this reality the galaxy is more peaceful than it has been in 1,000 years. That is not nothing." "No," Elena agreed, "it is not nothing." The delegation arrived in the afternoon. They were called the Zankari, a species from the far edge of explored space. Their bodies were tall and thin, with silvery skin that reflected light like mirrors. They had heard stories about the Council of Free Worlds, about the strange species called humans who had ended a galactic empire through sheer stubbornness. "We have traveled far to meet you, Secretary General," their leader said. His name was Zanver, and his voice had a musical quality that was pleasant to human ears. "I am no longer Secretary General," Elena replied. "I am just Elena now." "To us, you will always be the one who changed the galaxy," Zanver said. "Your actions have reached even our distant worlds. We have heard how you faced the Corvani with nothing but determination and wisdom, how you won a war without destroying your enemy, how you built peace from the ashes of conflict." "The stories probably make it sound more heroic than it was," Elena said. "The truth is messier. We made many mistakes. We almost failed many times. Even now, the peace we have built is fragile." "That is why we are here," Zanver replied. "Our people face a similar situation. We are caught between two larger empires, both of which want to control our territory. We cannot defeat either of them in battle. We thought perhaps we could learn from your example." Elena looked at Vorthax, who gave a slight nod. The Corvani knew about these empires. They were beyond even what the old Corvani Empire had controlled, vast civilizations that had never been challenged. "Tell me about your situation," Elena said, "and then perhaps we can discuss how the council might help." The discussion went on for hours. The Zankari explained that they were a peaceful species, focused on art and philosophy rather than war. They had no weapons capable of threatening the empires that surrounded them. They had come to the Council of Free Worlds as a last resort. "We cannot make the same threat you made," Zanver said sadly. "We are not builders of weapons. We are not warriors. We are just a people who want to be left alone." "The threat was only part of what we did," Elena replied. "And honestly, it was the easy part. The hard part was what came after, building trust with our enemies, showing them a different way. That did not require weapons. It required patience, wisdom, and a willingness to see our enemies as potential partners." But how can we negotiate from a position of weakness? Zanver asked. They have no reason to respect us. You are not as weak as you think, Vorthax interjected. The Corvani once thought the same about humanity. We saw their primitive technology, their small fleet, their fragile bodies. We thought they had nothing to offer us except labor. We were wrong. What do you mean? Zanver asked. Every species has something valuable, Vorthax explained. For the humans, it was their creativity, their adaptability, their refusal to give up. For you, it might be something else. Your art, your philosophy, your way of seeing the universe. These things have value, even if they cannot be measured in military power. Alina nodded in agreement. The empires that threaten you are powerful, but they are also isolated. They have conquered many species, but they have not learned from them. They have not grown. If you can offer them something they cannot get through conquest, something that enriches their civilization, they may see you differently. And if they don't, Zanver asked, if they simply take what they want and destroy us anyway? Then you will not be alone, Alina said firmly. The Council of Free Worlds was created to protect species like yours. We have 34 member civilizations now, including the Corvani. We have a combined fleet that is larger than any single empire. And we have something more powerful than weapons. We have the moral authority of a coalition that does not seek to conquer. Zanver looked around the room at the human and Corvani representatives. You would fight for us, a species you have only just met. We would, Vorthax said. That is what the Council stands for, the protection of all free peoples. When we accepted the humans' terms, we committed to a new way of life. That commitment means nothing if we do not extend it to others. For the first time since the meeting began, Zanver's silver skin seemed to brighten. This is unexpected. We came here hopping for advice. We did not expect to find allies. That is the human way, Alina said with a smile. We make allies out of everyone, even former enemies. The meeting concluded with an agreement in principle. The Zankari would apply to join the Council of Free Worlds. In the meantime, the Council would open diplomatic channels with the empires that threatened them, explaining that the Zankari were now under the Council's protection. It was not a perfect solution. There would be difficult negotiations ahead, perhaps even conflict, but it was a start. After the Zankari departed, Alina sat on her porch watching the sun set over the ocean. Vorthax sat beside her, a glass of human wine in one of his 4 hands. Over the years, he had developed a taste for Earth's beverages. Do you think those empires will listen? She asked. Some will, Vorthax replied. Others will not. But every species that joins the Council strengthens our position. Every successful negotiation proves that our way works. In time, even the most stubborn empires will see that cooperation offers more than conquest. You sound almost optimistic, Alina said with amusement. That's new for you. Vorthax made a sound that was his species' equivalent of a laugh. I have spent 20 years working alongside humans. Your optimism is infectious. Perhaps that is why the galaxy is changing. Not because of your weapons or your threats, but because of your belief that things can always be better. That belief almost got us killed, Alina reminded him. Almost, Vorthax agreed, but it also saved us all. 50 years after the peace treaty, the galaxy gathered to commemorate the anniversary. Representatives from over 60 species came to the same space station where the original treaty had been signed. The station had grown over the decades, expanding to accommodate the growing community of free worlds. Alina Vasquez was no longer alive. She had passed away 10 years earlier, surrounded by her family and her friends from across the stars. Her last words had been simple: keep building, keep believing. The work is never finished. But her legacy lived on. A statue of her stood in the main hall of the station, depicting her as she had looked during the original negotiations, determined, wise, and full of hope. Next to her statue stood one of Elder Corvith, who had also passed away, and Vorthax, who had died just 2 years ago. The three figures represented the unlikely partnership that had changed the galaxy. The current Secretary General of the Council was a young woman named Maria Chen. She was the granddaughter of the general who had served under Alina during the original crisis. She had grown up hearing stories about those desperate days, about the missiles that could have destroyed everything, about the peace that had emerged from the threat of mutual destruction. "Today we celebrate more than an anniversary," she said to the assembled delegates. "We celebrate a transformation. 50 years ago, the galaxy was divided between conquerors and conquered. Today, we are united in a community of equals. This did not happen by accident. It happened because ordinary beings from many species chose to believe that a better way was possible." She gestured toward the statues. "Alina Vasquez taught us that strength is not just about weapons and armies. True strength is the ability to offer mercy when you have the power to destroy. True strength is the courage to build bridges instead of walls. True strength is believing in your enemy's capacity to change." Among the delegates was a young Corvani named Kelver. He was the grandson of Admiral Vorthax's son, who had watched from the bridge of the Eternal Conquest as his father received Alina's transmission. Kelver had grown up in a galaxy that was very different from the one his ancestors had known. "My great-grandfather fought in the war against Earth," he told a group of young delegates during a break in the ceremonies. "He commanded the fleet that destroyed the human orbital defenses. He expected to conquer humanity and add them to our empire. Instead, he found a species that taught us to conquer ourselves." "Do the older Corvani resent what happened?" a young Vorth asked. His people had been among the most brutally enslaved, and relations between Corvani and Vorth were still sometimes difficult. "Some do," Kelver admitted honestly. "Change is hard, especially for those who remember the old ways, but the younger generations are different. We have grown up knowing that there is another way to live, that power does not have to mean domination. We have learned from the humans and from the species we once enslaved." The young Vorth nodded slowly. "My grandfather still has nightmares about the labor camps. He cannot forget what your people did, but he also cannot forget that the humans gave him back his freedom. He says that holding onto hatred would be letting the past control the future." "That sounds like something Alina Vasquez would have said," Kelver replied. "He learned it from her," the Vorth said. "Many of us did." The ceremonies continued through the day and into the night. Speeches were given, memories were shared, and new commitments were made. The Council announced plans to expand its reach even further, to contact civilizations in distant parts of the galaxy that had never heard of the community of free worlds. "There are still empires out there," Secretary General Chen said. "Still species that believe conquest is the only path to power. Our work is not finished. Perhaps it never will be. But we have proven that another way is possible, and that is a message worth spreading." As the ceremonies concluded, a message arrived from the Zankari, the species that Alina had helped decades ago. They reported that the empires that had threatened them were now in negotiations to join the Council. The example of the community of free worlds had inspired change even in the most unlikely places. "That is the true legacy of what we built," an old Corvani diplomat said, reading the message. "Not the treaties or the institutions, but the idea. The belief that cooperation is better than conquest, that mercy is stronger than revenge, that species that were once enemies can become friends." A human historian had been documenting the ceremonies, recording interviews and gathering stories. She approached the old Corvani diplomat with a question that had been on her mind. "Looking back, do you think the humans' threat was justified?" she asked. "They were willing to destroy the entire galaxy to avoid being conquered. Some historians argue that such a threat was too extreme, that it could have led to the extinction of all life." The diplomat considered the question carefully. "It was extreme," he agreed, "but it was also honest. The humans did not pretend to be something they were not. They showed us exactly what they were willing to do, and then they gave us a choice. Conquest or cooperation, destruction or peace. We chose peace because we wanted to survive, but in the process we discovered something unexpected. What was that? The historian asked. We discovered that peace was better than conquest, not just safer but better. Our civilization has flourished in these 50 years more than it did in the previous 500. We have learned from other species, adopted new ideas, solved problems that seemed impossible. The humans did not just threaten us. They showed us a path to a better future. That is why I believe their threat was justified, because of what came after. The historian wrote down his words carefully. They would become part of the historical record, preserved for future generations to study and debate. As the station's night cycle began, the delegates dispersed to their quarters. Some would return to their homeworlds in the morning. Others would stay for additional meetings and negotiations. The work of the council never truly stopped. Secretary General Chen stood alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. She thought about Elena Vasquez, about the weight of decisions that affected billions of lives, about the responsibility of leadership in a galaxy that still faced many challenges. A young aide approached her. "Madam Secretary, there's an urgent message from the Outer Rim. A new species has been detected, one we've never encountered before. They're approaching Council space." "Hostile or peaceful?" Chen asked. "Unknown. Their technology is unlike anything we've seen. They're not responding to standard hails." Chen took a deep breath. New challenges were inevitable. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be unknown threats and opportunities. That was the nature of existence. "Assemble the emergency council," she ordered, "and send a message to our fleet. Approach with caution, but do not engage unless fired upon. We will treat them as potential friends until they prove otherwise." "Some council members will argue for a stronger response," the aide warned. "They'll say we should show strength." "We will show strength," Chen replied. "But strength comes in many forms. Elena Vasquez showed the greatest strength possible when she offered mercy to her enemies. We will do the same. If this new species wants peace, they will find willing partners. If they want war, they will find a united galaxy ready to defend itself. Either way, we will meet them as we are, free peoples who choose cooperation over conquest." The aide hurried away to carry out her orders. Chen remained at the observation deck, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, a new chapter was beginning. New challenges, new opportunities, new tests of the community they had built. She thought about Elena's last words: "Keep building, keep believing. The work is never finished." That was the truth of it. The peace they had built was not a destination but a journey. Each generation had to renew the commitment, face new challenges, find new ways to cooperate across the vastness of space. It would never be easy. It would never be finished. But that was what made it worth doing. 50 years ago, humanity had faced extinction. They had responded not with despair but with defiance. They had threatened to destroy the galaxy, then offered mercy. They had turned enemies into allies, slaves into partners, an empire into a community. And now, as new stars beckoned and new species emerged from the darkness, they were ready to do it again. Not because they had to, but because it was who they were. Humanity had shown the galaxy what was possible when you refused to give up, refused to surrender, refused to accept that the future was written. The future was not written. It was built, one choice at a time, by beings who believed that tomorrow could be better than today. That was humanity's true legacy. Not the missiles or the threats, but the belief. The stubborn, irrational, magnificent belief that anything was possible if you were willing to fight for it. And the galaxy, once divided and conquered, was learning to believe too. The war had ended with unprecedented terms of mercy, but the real victory was not the peace. The real victory was what the peace had made possible: a galaxy of free peoples, working together, building something greater than any empire could ever be. Secretary General Chen smiled as she watched the stars. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That was the human way. That was now the galactic way. And somewhere, Elena Vasquez was smiling too.